And Ken, you were in World War II in the...
I was with a overseas, and I joined them before going overseas in Georgia. The 1116th MP Company. It was a combat company supposed to go with the Merle's Marauders. They was already fighting in the islands. And we went down through from San Francisco to Australia. We dropped off a load of GIs there. We were supposed to pick up the Merle's Marauders from the islands and take them on to India and Bombay is where we headed for after we made 3 stops in Australia. Then up to Bombay, they got off first and they went ahead of us, and we took the train. It takes 12 days across India, like it's the size of Texas, on a train, and with about 1,000 Indians hanging on the outsides of it, on the top. We're in the cars, of course. We get to Bombay, we had to take a boat up the Brahmaputra River, halfway up, and then we catch another train on one side of the river, and we had to switch again before we get up where we're going north in the province of Assam, A-S-S-A-M. I don't know what they call it today, but there's no cities or states up in that. It's jungle area. In fact, one base that I was stationed with most of the time in India when I was there, Frank Buck had a camp. They used to bring back the animals to the United States, and it was only 20 miles from our camp. So we didn't have to get out and hunt them. They was already up there eating in our garbage cans. We could take you couldn't kill a tiger with a 45 because he'd get wounded and go through all those little villages and wipe everybody out. But with him and M1, he was gone. And it was a 100-man outfit, and 85 guys got tiger skins. We was there, of course, 4 years and about 2 months in India and Burma. And a few of us made a trip to China on the airplane. We hauled gasoline over to the 14th Air Force, was using the gas for fighter planes to fight Japanese at the time in China. And we was ground troops in India in the jungles. We had these storage areas, and it's a wild country. And it's still there was starvation going at the time. I remember going across by the train. Little kids who was just so high, and they had a big pot belly like a pregnant woman, and that was from starvation. That was the worst thing. We told them our K rations, they wouldn't even pick them up. So later on, as time went by, they got friendly with us. We used to hire them. Each GI soldier got about $50 a month, and he didn't get to clear. He sent someone home, and he could afford to have what they called him a barrel, like a servant. He was to be a young kid, probably 15 years old, 16, something like that. We each all had, 4 guys to a hut. Later on, we got huts, and we'd chip in. We paid him a rupee. That was for a month. That was a value of a US dollar 89 cents, 1 rupee. And most women was building roads in the camp, and that up to the first 2 years I was over there, just carrying a bucket of asphalt on there, like a tin basket on top of their head. There was a steady rotation going around, and they'd dump it off on the road, and then somebody would pound it down. But as soon as the 6x6 came by, most of the asphalt flew to the side. There's just mud roads. And I used to ride a motorcycle, and I know when I rode on the road, you couldn't do over 15 miles an hour. You'd be lucky to do that speed, because it was all bumpy from the 6x6 trucks. And then, of course, we had jeeps, and we had weapons carriers, and we went around to 3 different camps. I was in Tezpur. It's the northern part of the country. Small town. There's a Chinese restaurant in it, and the GIs went there. They thought they was going to town or doing something different from on the base, because there's not much to do there but play volleyball or something like that. And then we always had MPs in town, of course. It was all right. They didn't drink no beer in town. There's no beer up there unless it was at the camp. The first time we got 2 bottles of beer the first month we was there. Next month we got 6 bottles of beer. Third month we got about an 18 or half a case or something. But by the 5th month we could go buy a case of beer for $1 at the PX. So we drank our share of beer because there was no good water over there in India. And the temperature most days 110, 120, 130 even. Then you think when the monsoons came, like for 30 days every year, it comes, I don't remember the months now, but you think it's going to cool off? No, it was 120 with the rain on you, and that you was walking around in your undershorts all the time, because that's how there was no American women over there at that time, though. Later on, they got a small medical place and brought one or two nurses in, so we had to wear either a long pants or a uniform in most cases when we was on duty. But they weren't nowhere near us on the camp. They was guarded wherever they were. And it was, that was one base. There's another base was like maybe 25 miles away. It's called Missamara. It was the worst place in the world to catch malaria. In fact, we lost 3 men in the first year that had to be sent back to the States because once you got malaria over there, there's no way that you get rid of it. I was going to say something else, but I caught myself. Getting better. And then there was snakes, there was tigers. You didn't have to go out on a tiger hunt. We did go on a couple times. I went and I rode on top of big elephants, and the pay was nothing. You get a guy maybe a half a rupee or something like that, or 25 cents. He'd ride you down, 3 or 4 guys on top of that big elephant, about 35 feet in the air, and you'd shoot your tigers from that. Or just go by the mess hall, and you'd hear those cans starting to flip around. That was the tigers over there trying to get the scraps thrown away, and they knew what they could soon learn what was there. There's a lot of meat and that. Well, it was mostly no refrigeration. We got mutton. That's goat, or I think it's goat or close family goat, because with no refrigeration, it was packed in salt. And they'd fix it 9 different ways, so you thought you got something different. Then went to mess hall. We did have coffee for breakfast, and later on things got better. But nothing like it being where some guys got over in the European theaters, other theaters. You could ask for a transfer, but nobody heard you. And let me see what else I can tell you. Oh, snakes. Oh, God. They have some snakes you probably never heard of. They have they have pythons. I've heard of those. Are 20, 22 feet long, right in where Frank Buck's camp was. And they had tigers roaming around there all the time, and there's all kind of other jackals, they call them. A cheetah is supposed to be the fastest animal in the world. He could probably travel 60 miles an hour. And you had to have a good shot of an M1 to catch that baby because he was really flying when he was running from you discovered him going. He was about the size of a good-sized dog, but he was really fast. And there's other animals, and the bats over there, we'd shoot them in the tree, they'd be hanging there by their wings. I got pictures here, I don't know where they're at in the house or someplace. They have a wingspan of up to 12 feet on these bats. I mean, this bat's the size of a rat, but the wings stretch out, like 6 foot that way and 6 foot that way. That's 12 feet. And, the Indians, after we shot them, they won, of course, because they cooked them. And these are bats. And the bat sounds like a rat, and it looks like a rat, the head body. And I can't think right now. Of course, that's a few years ago. That's in World War II. And that was from 1942 to 1946. I got back the first day of 1946. Back I met my dad down at the B&O station in Youngstown, Ohio. My dad happened to be a railroader. And he was down there to get me, of course. I was engaged to a beautiful girl. The picture's right beside me. She became my wife. Elda Campana, Aldacampana. And she was 25 when I got married because I was overseas 4.5 years. And we was married for 60 years. And she died on my 60th anniversary in 2004 on June the 15th. That's the date I got married. And there was a date in 2004 when she died. That was 60 years of marriage. Because we got married as soon as I come back in 1946. But a couple months later, we was engaged. In fact, the only engagement I had was I sold my car for $300 or $400. I don't know what it was. And I had a brother-in-law that had some pull. He got me a nice diamond ring for half a carat diamond for about $600. That was one of the good things he did for me. There wasn't too many other things he did for me because he was kind of loaded. Not drinking now. But he was with his friends, and I'm in a little different category. And that's about all I can... the other things, if Mike wants to ask me some questions, I'll gladly answer them.
Your parents, were they here from the United States?
Oh, yeah. My mother has a little German in her, and my dad was strictly a Johnny Bull or an Englishman. And he had a little bit of a Johnny Bull temper once in a while. He was a railroader, probably for 45, 50 years on railroad.
You were born here, Kenny?
I was born here in Youngstown, Ohio, on Lansdowne Boulevard. And my mother used to drive a horse and buggy to take us when we had to go to some place because we didn't have a car in those days. And my dad liked to have a hot meal. He worked on a railroad, and we had to drive through some, they called it the Jungle Inn Trail, through the jungle on Hubbard Road, down where he was working. The train was parked there. She'd give him the meal and we'd come back. And this is in the middle of winter now. And we would be blankets over us, and Dad had a railroad lantern, a couple of them. That kept us warm in there while we went. And my mother would back the horse back in the table and put it away. And my dad wouldn't be coming home probably he'd work 12, 18 hours sometimes. But he didn't get that many days. Depression was coming up, and when that hit, he was lucky to get one day a month. And we never got on relief. My dad kept us going. We hauled coal. All of his railroad friends would have him haul the coal, and they'd make a few bucks. Dad'd be in there talking with the man, or maybe having a beer or two, I don't know. But me and my brothers would be out there throwing the coal down the coal chute in his house, freezing our little tokas off. Notice I use nice words, Michael. Now, what else would you like to say?
Your education.
Oh, yeah, I went to Scienceville Junior High School. That was the first 5 or 6 grades. Passed all the time through. They didn't want me back. And then I got to high school for the 4 years or 5 years, 9th through the 12th. Scienceville High School. That's on the east side of Youngstown, out McGuffey Road, up toward where the guy, the McGuffey Reader, come from, but not that far out now. He was out further in Coatesville. And he was a big name of the school books, the McGuffey Reader. I never read much about it or paid attention, but they got a statue and they got a lot of stuff out there on a farm in honor of the man out there, still yet today.
Where were you on December 7th, 1941, at the time Pearl Harbor was bombed?
And my sister and my dad worked at the railroad, and he got us a free pass to ride out to visit a cousin of mine, Harry Wilson, in North Hollywood. It was right outside of Los Angeles. I think the train ride took us 4 or 5 days to get out there, and we stayed there 2 weeks with him. He took us down to Mexico, all around. He took a week off vacation. He worked for Chevrolet Garage, I think it was. And also, we got on a train to come back, and there was a lot of storms in those days back out west. Well, the train was rerouted. It went, I don't know, it was going north, going south, going east, going west, and it took us about 2 weeks to get back. But every time I talked to a railroad, they'd pass the word on to my dad that I was all right, and my sister was with me, Frances. She's deceased. She died in 1943. And I was overseas, just going, about to, ready to go overseas, and they let me go home on a 2-day furlough, emergency furlough for her. We were on the train coming back, and we heard about Pearl Harbor on the train, and we didn't know we knew where Pearl Harbor was and what was going on and what the people were saying. Of course, I knew when I got back home, I went back to British school, but it wasn't in it very long, maybe a month or less. And then, of course, I got drafted. So I was one of the first drafts and went in right away. I wasn't 18 yet, but they still took me in the Army. They didn't, there wasn't nothing in those days to have. You didn't have defects to keep you out unless you had something really seriously wrong with you. And our first camp I went to I went down to Ohio State, Columbus, Ohio, and then they put you on a train. You went down to a quartermaster corps. I was in that and had my basic training. And then they put me through a school to learn how to repair Jeeps, the 4-wheel drives, and the trucks we worked on with professional civilians to show us how to repair those trucks and that. So we overseas would be able to keep the convoys going and breakdowns. But in the meantime, something happened, I don't know. The next thing I knew, I'm getting shoved, and I go to another camp. I think it's Camp Stoneman. It was in North Carolina. It was an infantry camp. And it was with the Lightning Division, anybody from 16 to 22 years old was the only ones allowed in it. And it was supposed to be like, they call it the Lightning Division, and they really taught us all about the Army and about the war and the guns, and we could sit blindfolded and take the M1 apart. I think there's 42 or 52 parts to it. We had to name the parts off by the feel of the parts. That's how much I knew how to really, if I was in a foxhole, I'd be able to save my life if the gun jammed or something. And the same thing with a 45. And so, but it so happened we went through that. And I met one guy from Youngstown. I can't remember his name, but he was over the limit. He was about 60 years old. I said, "You don't belong in this Army, man. Go home where you can go back and relax." So he did go back, and he went and told the captain. They showed his page, and they got him back out of the Army, back in Youngstown. I can't remember his name now, but Harry Weimer, I think it was, Weimer maybe. And so then I get in the MPs that, and we have more training on guns and that. And I'm listening to these guys. I said, Sergeant, you want me to do something for you? I said, I'm not trying to be smart or something, but put a blindfold on me, and I'll tear this gun apart and put it together again and show you and name every part on it, because that's how well they trained us at that infantry camp. And nobody down there, even some of the professional non-commissioned officers, could say the things like I did at the time. That's how well trained we were. But that didn't come to my advantage. As I was MPs, we carried a 45. You had your M1 with you because you could never shoot a tiger. And there were some attacks in different camps over there where the MP's out on the gate and maybe the next guy's 4 or 5 miles from each other. And there's two of them on this one gate, and the tiger was clawing this one guy, and the other guy's a carbine. He pumped the whole, well, my mother slips in a clip before he killed that tiger. But if he'd had one M1 and a gun right next to him, he could have blown his head off with it. He didn't have an M1 with him. Many times I was driving around in a Jeep and I'd have this my 45. I'd see a tiger laying there in a ditch. Would be nothing. Shoot him, you could stop the Jeep 2 seconds and think aim. He's laying right there sleeping in the ditch, in a dispersal area where we had the gasoline stored. But I could never find the rifle when you're out there with the wrong gun. You can't shoot a tiger with a 45 because he's not. You got to hit him right in the heart, which is right in the center of his 2 paws. And if you don't get that bullet right in there and be on top of him, he isn't going to die, I tell you. And he attacked everything gets in his way. And you go through the Indian villages, because we worked with the civilian police over there. They told us we have a motto over here to do is if you shoot a tiger, you follow it till you make sure it's dead. It's laying in the ditch or the ground. And it took sometimes 10, 12 guys to pick up one of those tigers and put them in the back of a weapons carrier, which is a big, heavy duty, like a pickup truck on that scale, but it's about 4 times as heavy. And we shove him in the rear end and first, and his paws still be hanging over that gate. That's how big some of those tigers were. But it took about 10 GIs to pick the thing up. And then snakes was pythons, and they had one snake they called a whip snake, because some of the jungle you walk through in just trails, and it was real thick overhead. He'd hang by its head, and he'd be about 6 foot long. And then on his tail, if he got close with all you did is whip his tail, and the needle shot out, and that needle hit you and just made a line on you like that. You was dead in 7 seconds. It was called a whip snake. Then, of course, the Indians, a lot of them had that cobra in a little wooden cage, and they'd be all around watching the guy playing a flute or whatever he was playing there. And they would, I know that snake bit a couple of them. I seen him happen one time on my house. I said, well, he's dead. You can't do it. And they said, well, he ain't dead till sundown. I said, well, sundown or not, I ain't going to shoot him. They want me to shoot the snake. I did shoot the snake. But I had to watch because they was ready to grab that. As you shoot a 45, the brass shell flies out. And they'd go crazy over brass because they'd make everything brass into something, a trinket that you'd buy and send home. I sent my mother home, and then when she had stuff from India, sent her like all hand silver, and they melt coins and they make this, the tray like, and then the little wine glasses. I don't know, was it over here? Probably you had to pay about $100 for it, and I got it over there for about $25. I got one for a guy that ran a beer garden. He wanted money, sent me the money to buy it because I could send packages home free as long as I could find a box to get it in, and they didn't charge us for no postage. We had free out all the time for all of our postage for GIs to use during the war. Today, I don't know if they still do that or not. I doubt it. But that's just some of them. And then the heat was the worst. India, is a very hot country, and I don't know, I know even yet today, the temperature dries up. They don't know air conditioning. They don't even have no electricity where we was. So, you couldn't even find electric light, or no refrigeration. So you had to use mutton or something that wouldn't spoil on you right away. And we didn't eat tiger meat, I did once shot a deer, because there's a small Chinese restaurant in the town of Tezpur. I gave the guy, and we took about 12 MPs. We had a nice supper meal for it, and he kept the rest of the deer. There's little deers. There was probably about twice the size of a dog. And other animals, I couldn't name them all to you now, and there's all kind of tea plantations up there. But these women, when they worked on those roads and that, they'd be there by the thousands. And they made a steady line going, because all they hauled was a couple cups of blacktop, in their little thing on their head. They just made a big circle out there, and they come back and walk there. And some of them even had the babies right when they was working on the job. And so they follow a line, have the baby, and somebody else take care of the baby, and they'd go back to work again within the hour.
Were the roads being built for the war effort?
No, nothing like that. We didn't. All the time was there. We never had a good paved road. They put a lot of slag down, and the blacktop, like I tell you, they wouldn't stay because it wouldn't be thick enough. You have it on maybe 2 inches thick or 3, but there's no base. As soon as that rain comes, that mud, everything was mud because it rained for 30 days straight, night and day. It just didn't let up, and it did not cool you down. That's what you're hoping for, because and then you don't forget your roof or your hut. You always got rain on it. It's thatch. It wasn't roof like we have in our homes here, but I'm gonna say it was probably 12 inches thick. That's hay or straw, and that's the whole roof is. And then of course the rain comes trickling right down over top of that. And you always got to be in a mosquito net, because the malaria was bad any place in India. But that one city I told you about in Miss America is the worst place in the world, they claim, for that. I knew an army nurse over there that was from Youngstown. I tried to go see her up in Lido, Burma, that was up right next on the borderline, India and Burma together. And I didn't see her, but I saw a girl, another nurse, Catherine O'Neill, and she has died since then. But I saw her over there, and she was in my class at school. But the Clara that I looked for, they sent her back to the States, because if you get the dysentery over there, that's what they called it. We call them GIs here, but it doesn't, sometimes you just can't get rid of it, dysentery. It's a very bad bowel movement stuff, and they have to send you back to the States to treat you right on it. If there was no way to cure you, they'd give you a can of peanut butter or cheese, what was that, orange-colored cheese? You shouldn't eat that. Try to block yourself up, because I'm sorry if this is on TV. This is the way I got to talk. That's why we talked over there. We had no shame, no nothing else. It was everyday life. We had the church service. The same guy was a priest. He was a reverend for all branches of service. And I had a buddy from Zanesville that took me to, all the time I was over there, every Sunday if I was off or it was available, we could get together. We went to Mass together. I wasn't even Catholic, but I still went and I enjoyed it. And I think that helped me convert to Catholic, because my wife was Catholic. And I converted to it, and I'm well satisfied with it.
What was your fondest memory of the war years?
Of the war years?
Times in the service.
It was very hard on the people all the time because of the years we was over there. You know what I mean by, I don't know what the terms you say to...
Your fondest memory,
of goodness?
Goodness.
Well, I can't say I was fond of flying because I saw too many planes crack up. And a lot of them blew up, and they had ammunition in them, and you couldn't get near the plane for 2 or 3 days because the shells were, when the fire was on it, and it was still, the bullets were flying out of the plane. And then we had, don't forget I tell you, those planes held 55-gallon drums of gasoline. That's high-test airplane gasoline, and that's in a B-24. They called it a C-87. They took the guns off it, so it cut some of the weight out of it. Now, C-46 would haul probably about 18. And the C-47 is a smaller 2-engine plane. I think they got around 8 or 10 in it. But this was a long way to fly up the Himalayan mountains. We could see them all the time in the skyline, And they would leave our camp, and they'd just steady climb with the plane full of gas. It was 300-some miles before it was climbing those mountains. It was climbing constantly. They didn't get over to China because that's where they had to go with that gasoline. And if they found a Chinese guy with a test tube of gas on him, he was shot on the spot because they know there's no gasoline around available unless they stole it from somebody, got it somehow. And there was no gas around. Some of the Rajas tried to buy even trucks or jeeps off of the GIs over there. So they had to chain them down at night. Then the next day they go out, they'd find the 4 tires or wheels chained down, and the rest of the jeep's all gone. So there was the Rajas had a lot of money, the certain ones. And it's like today, there's some Rajas around and there's politicians we got going. They're getting a lot of money too. I heard Ohio is one of the richest states of millionaires in the country right now because there must have been a lot of good contractors over there making some money in this Iraq war, which I think is a phony war. back to when I was over there guarding their planes, and some of them was full of money, Chinese wartime money, and there was all kind of bills on the skids, they call them, and it's about 8 foot tall. It may have been about 10 or 20 skids in these big planes, and I'd sit up in the cockpit. Nobody wanted the money. We either used it for toilet paper or we wrote letters on it to write to all the GI friends in different theaters of war. I had a couple of buddies in Africa I wrote to and corresponded with, a couple in England, a couple other countries. But the money was worthless. We didn't need any of it. I mean, you couldn't spend it no place. I've still got some in my drawer in the room there. I brought like Indian coins, all kind of pictures. I meet a lot of these Indian doctors. I talk a little bit of Hindu to them. They talk back to me in Hindu, a little bit that I know, the good words that is. And also, they, I was going to say, I'm getting a little old, 86, I forget, forgetfulness in my age coming up a little bit here. But they would, about the money in the planes, and it was just worthless. I mean, you could guard it, nobody was going to steal it, and not sit up in the cockpit. But you didn't want to get caught sleeping when you was on guard duty, because they could really hang you, like give you 6 months in jail or something. They wouldn't keep you there. They'd send you to Calcutta or some big army base. That was the worst thing you could do, is fall asleep if you're on duty. You just can't, and sometimes you get pretty tired because you couldn't sleep good because of the monsoons and the weather, And then when the war is over, there's more guys got shot and wounded on our base than all during the war, because everybody was drunk, and they all had guns. And I was an MP course. I'm out there supposed to try to keep control. I say, hell, man, let me get in a foxhole here or something. I'll get shot. But they was really blasted away. Now, what else am I going to tell you about? So we're naturally going to fly back, and I'm in a group of 15 guys. We're going to get in a B-25, and we went down that night to go to fly to Calcutta, and we're going to catch another plane in Calcutta. That's about 300 miles south of us. So it gets in he'd come down the runway. He tried 9 trips. He couldn't get the plane to make a lift off. Because you know why? Nobody had turned any of their barracks bags in, the equipment, their guns, and everything else. So that doubled the weight. The 15 guys was like 30 guys on the plane. Plus the pilot, the co-pilot, and one guy in the back was a radio man, except he didn't know how to work the radio. We was talking to that little tube that he could see through there. We went off this plane, man. You ain't going to make it. He got the 10th trip, he went down, he got their plane lifted off the ground. He was now 5 minutes, and bango, I seen that one engine on the right side kick off. Now, there's only 2 engines on a B-25. And there's a lot of mountains between where we're at, even small mountains, between that and Calcutta. He zigzagged and weaved between the mountains, and I don't know how long we was flying, probably for, it seemed like an hour. And we get down, and there's another plane having an emergency coming first, and we got landed on the ground. I walked in, saluted a full colonel. I said, that plane that just landed on one engine, I said, I just got off it, and I am not flying back no more to the United States. I've been here too long. I think something's after me. I don't know what it is. But anyway, he says, well, soldier, the war's over, so I can't court-martial or do nothing to you. He says, you can go. You have to stay here a month because it takes that long to cut orders to put you on a boat. My outfit, most of my outfit was back from overseas, 2 to 3 months ahead of me, and this other kid from Pennsylvania was a buddy of mine. Because we had to wait to get orders, and it took even going down around India again from Calcutta, up through the Red Sea, Mediterranean. The only thing I got thankful, or the fondness of the rest of the war, I made myself a complete trip around the world. I left from San Francisco, and went down around Australia and up to Bombay. I come from Calcutta around India again and up through where Iraq and all those countries are that we're having a war, and the Mediterranean. And the Pacific was like a smooth lake. In comparison to the Atlantic Ocean, we come back on I can't remember the exact date right now. Oh, January. I was home on the 2nd or 3rd of January on 48, I think it was. But anyway, regardless, that ocean up the way the boat would dip down and dip like this all the way back. One of those Liberty ships we had. And I said, I hope that they was welded good because the decks would vibrate like that when the screws, the propellers in the back would come out of the water. It'd make the decks vibrate. It was all steel. So we got back, and we went to Philadelphia or someplace, some camp, and they wanted to get us out before the end of the year, because it was going to cost you another week or 2 weeks in camp. So they rushed us through all they could. And I'd broken my one set of false teeth while I was over there, and they couldn't make teeth, so they gave me a little, if any of my buddies ever see this picture, that's why they called me Snag, because I didn't have my top set of teeth. But I got to get by. I could get by the bottom set. Now, since then, I've also had a lot of teeth at the bottom partial plate. But the top was a full plate. They couldn't not build you in overseas. That was I was over there probably 10, 11 months before I broke it. Eating the mutton, that little good old goat meat. But we got sick of that too. We didn't like it all the time. We'd eat some other stuff. Bananas, you could go pick them outside if you wanted to. But they weren't good ones like you buy in a store here. And they had some coconut trees. And I can't remember everything else. You're talking somewhere near 80 years ago. I'm 86 years old now. Not quite 80 years ago, but it isn't too far from it. Because I'm 85. January the 8th, I'll be 86. So I'm 85 and a half right now. That's about it. And I can think of a lot of stories, but I can't say it on TV, some of the other stories. But like Calcutta, for example, one thing I noted about it, all the GIs want to go down a furlough. Because I worked with the civilian police a lot, talked to them a lot. I wear my brassard and that. There's 250,000 cat houses, we called them. And they was all wide open free. Nobody bothered. MPs, nobody bothered them in the houses. Or there's in rickshaws, and some were in cabs. But the only thing they didn't allow to get caught in with a girl it was like a horse-drawn carriage. Now, where this screwy law come by, I don't know. These are open cars. I mean, they're 20, 30 years old. They look like new yet. Cars you never heard of the name of them before. Convertibles, four-door convertibles. You got the Indian girls there with you. You can down main drag a Calcutta, make love and do what you wanted to do. And nobody bothered you, see? But I think if the MPs would have caught you, they may have done something. They pulled you aside or something. But nobody paid attention, nobody over there. It was a bad, close. In the Bombay, I didn't see too much of that city. It was where we landed there. New Delhi, and I saw that big home they built, or not a home, it was a castle or something, I can't remember the name of it.
Taj Mahal?
Taj Mahal, yeah, on one of my trips we were coming across. I didn't get out or go into it or nothing, because we were coming across it, but left us make a little side trip to go see that, which was everybody that goes over there wants to see that. And that was about it.
And on your return back to the States from the service?
Mm-hmm. Well, my dad, instead of going straight home, he went by my girlfriend's house. In fact, she was in the car with me. And we set a date for our wedding right away, about 6 months. And got married, and I was married, as I told you, for 60 years. We had a nice party up at the Mahoney Country Club. And her sisters helped us on that. Edna Brown and her sister Mary Campana. And she is one from Youngstown, a local girl that holds the world's record for flying over Youngstown in a little Piper Cub. And she had extra 5-gallon cans of gasoline up there with her. She flew, I think it was 32 hours or something up above Youngstown. And a fog come in during the night. She couldn't land if she wanted to. And when she'd fly by, remember Idor Park that was out there? There was a big park on the south side. And where the swimming pool was, a big swimming pool, that made like a funnel opening in the clouds, She could see that. And she had a little temptation to go down and land, but she didn't. Good thing she didn't, because she'd been that was probably about a 5-foot deep lake, I think, in the Idor Park. But she flew and she landed back at the, and then they came over immediately and they knighted her and did a big hullabaloo. We got newspaper clippings with all of her books and that put away, that she was a world famous. And she even knew Amelia Earhart. You've heard of her. She met her and talked to her a lot in person. Later on in life, she got with a fellow from the May Company, and they opened up their own private stores. They called them, God, I can't remember, ladies' dresses down to babies. And they had them in about Cleveland, Toledo, Youngstown, I don't know whereabouts. So they had about 18 stores. And then rent and things got out of line. And like even when I was with the Singer Company, they had the same problems. If you was in a mall, you had to pay a lot of money. In those days, it kind of paid off. But I don't know how you make any money today because that rent is terrific in the malls. And maybe these towns will come back someday if they ever get enough people to go down to see them. I don't know. Okay. Okay, back to when I got married and had that big wedding and everything else. And we lived with my wife's parents for about 2 years. We saved money up. We got a down payment. We bought a brand new home on Everett Avenue, and I lived there for 15 years. Beautiful. We had a lot of fun there with the kids. We growed. We had around 3 or 4 children at that home. And my wife was Italian. She made a lot of spaghetti. We all like that. And pizza and the rest of the good stuff. Later on, I was always working. I got a job. I come back to my job. I worked at General Fireproofing. It was a chair factory. But the job they offered me after I got upstairs is you're hired right back automatically. Was not the job I left. And my understanding of the word was I get the job back that I left. Well, I could go to work in a suit if I wanted to. I was on a final assembly line, and I get a little dust on my hands with electric power screwdrivers. But I didn't take that job. I said, you keep it. I'll get the government to fight me. But they never did. Letters went back and forth.
This was the job you left
at General
when you were drafted.
Right. Same I left, right, because I was working before the war. But I went to saw a buddy downtown. He said, why don't you come work with me over? And I did. Went to the Center Company, met the manager. And he says, go get married first, go on your honeymoon, come back and go to work. That's exactly what I did. And I stayed with Singer, I don't know, 35, 40 years, something, whatever it was. I retired. And I can't remember the year right now because as I said, I got a little foggy. Exactly. But it was probably been 20 years ago since I've worked. I do nothing now. Track my Social Security. My pension went to hell because it didn't come like I was supposed to get about $1,300 to $1,500 a month. When the guy sold the company and put the money in foreign banks, the government never get any money off them. I got $300 instead of $1,295 a month. So what are you going to do? You buy used cars. You didn't buy new cars. And my wife had some good sisters. When they passed away in years to come later on, they left her a nice hunk of money, and then my wife died. She left the money to me, and there was a little bit of a mistake there. Of course, I helped out my daughter. I bought her a car. I bought my son a nice hunk of money. I had about 7 or 10, I don't know exactly, grandchildren by then. They all got $500 apiece. I bought 3 new cars about 2 years ago. In 1 year, I got help for doing that for my son. And so far this year, I've only bought 1 new car, and it's sitting outside there. It's a Chevrolet HHR, like a little station wagon, and it is a beauty. In fact, we went back to put the rest of the merchandise in it for me, and they loaned me a Cadillac to use for a week. And they knew I was going to want to buy that sucker, of course. And I wanted to trade him. I says, we want $20,000 a Cadillac, and I says, I got $22,000 in my car. I'll swap you title for title. And he liked me. He's a nice man. I can't remember his name right now, but it's I'll think of it later. But he said, we can't do that. We got to get $20,000 cash. Don't look at me for 1 cent or $5,000 because you're not going to get nothing. We can't trade even. I got a 2007 Chevrolet Malibu, not Malibu, but a HHR out there, and I love it. And it'll fly if you want to because it really got a lot of pep to it and speed. That's about it, Mike.
Do you think the war efforts made our country better?
Right now, you mean? Presently? No, this country is so disgusted with this war we got going.
The World War II.
Oh, World War II, yeah. It was the bomb. I'm glad the bomb dropped because that made me get home a heck of a lot earlier. See, I'd have been over there probably overseas 6 months to a year later, before they got all the guys back. But when that bomb went, they went by the oldest people there, and my office was one of the oldest or first we weren't the first, but we was right in line with them. And then, as I said, I refused to fly after I got to Calcutta, so it took me a little longer. But still, all the other guys that flew back on other planes, they was back before I was by 3 months at least. Because I had to pull MP duty in Calcutta, which was no work involved. And I made friends, a lot of Indian friends over there. That Rajas had some money, and I talked to them. I don't correspond with them. And today you talk to Indian, I got half my doctors are Indian right now, and they are good doctors, but they study hard, and they're not from up where I was at. And when I show them this money and all these photographs I got of India, it's news to them. It's like if I was showing it to you people in the public out there, because they never saw that. They was all from down the bottom of India. They call it Ceylon. Ceylon, a little island off it, and the southern tip of India. And that's where, I guess, all the money is, because that's where about 90% of your doctors are coming from, in India. And then there's doctors from other countries too, but mainly from India. There's more Indian doctors here than I can think of, shake a stick at. But they're good, I tell you. And I know some of the things like saying, instead of saying good morning, you do this. Salam Saab, that means good morning.